I think just one, if you follow him on Twitter, he's got a lot to say about basketball and all of the comments and things of that nature. I have to make sure that he understands, like, Craig, you're a player too, and there are going to be people who are going to be critiquing you too. But from that regard, I just think, he's done internships, which don't get highlighted. He did an internship with the Big Ten Network a year ago. He was in Chicago for the Big Ten basketball tournament. He was part of the Black Student Athletes Summit in Los Angeles this May. I mean, he just does a lot of things that out from underneath the helmet that don't get a lot of publicity, and I think that's going to serve him well once he finally hangs the cleats up. Hopefully that won't be for a while.
You brought up defense. What's one word you would describe using this strategy?
Consistent, which is the hardest thing I think for anybody to be. He's consistent. He's consistent in his attitude. He's consistent in his effort. Consistent in his play. I think he's a goal-driven guy. Just really excited to have him. And like I said, that kid in the state of Iowa. Coach Vance talks about it all the time. We're looking for defensive linemen. Don't forget about the big linebacker. But it takes an unselfish big linebacker to want to say, okay, I'm going to play defensive lineman. Most kids shy away from it.
Coach, you mentioned the depth at outside or inside tackle.
Yeah.
What about defensive end? What do you see? 3, 4, 5.
Oh man, so I think Brian Allen is coming along, practicing well. He's being more consistent, which is going to bode well for him. Max Llewellyn, still waiting for Max Llewellyn to go ahead, because he does it on the practice field a lot. We want to see that type of production in practice. We want to see it on the game field on Saturday, and I think he's ready to do that. I think he's as comfortable as he's ever been. I think those would be, guys behind Herkett and behind Craig. And Caden Crawford, probably a name that you don't know, kid who came in the class in 2020. Caden came in 2021 or 22. I can't remember.
I think 22.
But, yeah, 22. He's
you.
a guy that's starting to flash too. After spending the last a redshirt year and then last year on the scout team. I told Caden, this is a funny story, because I was, it was during the spring of, I was doing summer practice his freshman year, because he enrolled early. He and Brian both enrolled early. And I wasn't real happy with their development, especially after enrolling early. I told both guys they should have went to prom. It would have been a lot better decision to go to prom, because from what they had done up until that point, you couldn't tell that they had enrolled early. But both those guys are showing up in a big way for us now. And Kenny Merriweather as well, is coming along as just after one redshirt freshman year. Kenny's got some ability, natural ability, but he's got to learn how to be consistent and play the way that we want to play. But he's certainly flashed for us a lot this summer.
How about defensive tackle?
I think behind YA, behind Graves, you're looking at Jeremiah Pittman first. Guy who's been in that role, who understands the defense and continue to be steady Eddie. Jeff Bowie, like I said, is finally put together a spring ball. He's finally put together summer practice where he's been available and practicing every day. So it's exciting. It's good to see him because he's doing some things that a fourth-year guy should do, playing that way. And then Will Hubert and Luke Gaffney, both those guys, a couple of walk-ons here, but man, they're invested. They're tough as nails. They understand our defense, and they're really doing everything they can do to put themselves in position to earn some time this fall. Really pleased with what they've done so far.
What makes this group special?
I didn't call them special. You called them special. I didn't call them special. I think they understand that this is a new year. None of these guys rest on their laurels. None of these guys talk about what happened last year, and the only expectations are within the room. They don't listen from the outside. They know what's important to us and what we have to do to play successful team defense, and that's what we're about. There's no individual accolades in the room, and they know that when the defense is successful, it's because we're doing our job.
Your job's always encompass a lot of times two gaps. Selfless football. It's, hey, I may only get one tackle today, but still be the most dominant player in the game.
Absolutely.
How hard is that to condition somebody mentally that I'm not shooting a gap, except for Davey on did that.
I think one thing, when the young men are being recruited and when they come here, they see the success defensively. And I think that piques a lot of people's interest. They're like, okay, you see Iowa's name floating around with Clemson, floating around with Georgia, floating around with Notre Dame and the likes of those from a defensive standpoint. So that's going to pique a kid's interest. But then when they get here, they understand the system of how. And I think once they understand the structure of how we play, I do give them the latitude to be them. But they have to understand the big picture of what's going on, and that's the hard part. Because in high school, nobody 2 gaps. I mean, usually you're big enough, strong enough to dominate the guy that's in front of you, but to understand that and play with technique and what we do up front, it allows for us to do some of the creative things that you see on the back end because we're covering more than one gap, so we don't have to have everybody eyes in the box, and but that takes an unselfish kid, that takes a disciplined kid, which is probably why you may see it take guys a little bit longer to reach the field than what you would see from other guys. To put a one gap guy on the field and say, hey, go, then that's probably really easy to do, more easy to do. But to say, hey, you got to play gap and a half, I need you square here, I need you to be this gap to this gap first, that takes some time.
What I find so interesting about your defense is that it's not built like back to front, but it's in some ways it's built to protect the back because the front dominates.
Absolutely, it is. We talk about it with our players all the time. We talk about how many gaps there are and things of that nature. But in today's offense, especially challenging with the offense that we've have now, with all the motions and the new receivers that are showing up in other places, in order for us to maintain the shell that we want to play, we don't adjust with the safeties. The backers have to cover them. When the backers leave the box, there's an open gap. Someone's got to cover it, and that's our responsibility. So, the better we are at that, the more successful we'll be as a whole defensively. And fortunately for us, the past 3 years, we've done a really good job at that.
You mentioned Brian and talking about the backup defensive ends. Do you feel like it's clicked for him in terms of getting on the field?
Nah, Elliot, it's not. You have to ask me that question. You have to ask me that question in December.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's just to be fair, because I don't want to put any unfair expectations on him and having people think, he's the second coming of Bruce Smith. Because that's where it'll go on social media.
Yeah.
But I think he understood last year the things that he needed to work on, and I can clearly tell that he's been working on them, and it's been less physical and more mental and approach to his day-to-day just operation within the building and and on the football field. I think he's taking that to heart.
And talking about more of those backup guys, we talked with Max in the spring. Yeah. He said that he really felt like he earned your trust.
Yes.
And then that's allowed him to have a little more freedom.
More latitude. If he can tell me, if my guys can tell me the why, I understand. But if they're just doing things just to do them, that's not going to fly. And Max, again, fourth-year guy, has a very good understanding of how we do things and why we do them. And he's answering questions, and he's showing up in places on the field that he should be, and not by chance. Like, he's there because this is why. And that I always appreciate.
I know you always want 7, 8, 9 guys. Or typically do.
Well, you know what? I like to have a rotation.
Okay.
I don't want to put a number on it, but I like to have a rotation because playing defensive line is hard, man. Yeah. And you come out here and you watch us practice, our big guys run around. They run around. And when you talk about a guy like Y.A. Black checking in at 6'6", 320 pounds, I'm not saying that he can't, but I wouldn't want him to play 80 snaps a game. Right. So to get the best out of YA, maybe he needs to play 40 and someone else, maybe 2 more guys need to chip in with 20 apiece so that we can still be fresh. And really it's about the effort, the energy, enthusiasm that you play with. You need fresh bodies to do that, but fresh bodies that know what's going on and how we do it. And that's the challenge.
How many guys do you think are there? They know the why.
I feel really good about 7. Okay. And I'm sure, and there's more guys that are in the mix that are getting better every day.
Okay. Who are some of those guys that are getting better?
I think Will Hubert, Luke Gaffney, Caden Crawford, Kenny Merriweather, Jeff Bowie are all guys that are doing really good things for us right now.
I also wanted to ask just about, I'm not going to say it's miraculous because, you're not parking the water or the sea or anything like that, but just that now to be able to stop the run the way you do without having 8 in the box, and in fact you've converted a linebacker to a hybrid, mostly defensive back position. How have you guys been able to do that and do so successfully?
That's a great question, Scott. I think really what it comes down to is we got really smart players. And they devour our scouting reports, they devour our game plan. And because the structure of our defense has been the same for so long, there's not a lot of twists and turns in there for our guys. So when our guys see certain things, it's kind of by a process of elimination, you kind of have an idea before the ball snap where that thing's going to go, or more importantly, where you don't want it to go. And I think that and teams aren't as patient, maybe as they used to be. And you know, with guys, they want to dink and dunk the ball down the field, things of that nature. So teams aren't as patient, and I would couple it up with just our guys having a unique understanding formationally of what they're going to get. I think that allows us to play the run as good as you've seen it.
Who's going to be that feared pass rusher, kind of taking the spot of Joe?
You know, so okay, I'm glad you said that. Joe would really appreciate you calling him a feared pass rusher. You know, our defense, just based up front, isn't based off of pass rushing. It's more based off, I guess, pass disruption. And, you know, I think as guys start to understand tendencies, which Joe did, especially in his senior year, when that thing is going to be thrown and when it's going to be run, I think it'll give all those guys, anybody that plays on the edge, an opportunity to create a negative yardage play if they've done their homework. You know, I would think Deontay Craig, Ethan Herget could be the next names that you hear in terms of making some ruckus, with Brian Allen and Max Llewellyn as well, are guys that are fully capable. But again, that comes back to not just the physical gifts, it comes back to just the tendencies and the studying of the game plan, understand when it's going to happen and taking advantage of it, making the right decision at the right time.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
If you see Joe, tell him I said that.
All right.
Going to the Ravens camp? Yeah.
Yeah. I was there. I was out there in May.
Yeah, that's right.
He was doing a good job.
Yeah. Have you ever had to, when you were recruiting somebody and you noticed that they're might be too selfish for this defense, or somebody that just doesn't quite have the right mindset, did you ever back off somebody who might be talented enough that you would have really liked to coach?
You know, it's never me noticing that the kid's too selfish enough, because I think kids want to play for a winner. You know, even when back in the day when Oklahoma was running rub shot over everybody, Nebraska was running rub shot over everybody, they ran a triple option offense, they still had no problem getting the top receiver in the country. I think kids want to play for winners, they want to be around winners. It's the outside noise that can turn me away. Once a kid starts to listen to other people, not talk and not seek for understanding for himself, but rather listen to maybe an opposing coach who's recruiting against us, or maybe something that's being said on Twitter. Once a kid starts to be influenced by those things, that's when I start to back away. You know, if a kid's dealing with me and we're being honest, open, and transparent with each other, I think really good things can happen. But when kids talk to the recruitniks more than they talk to the coaches, that's when misconceptions can start, and that's when, you know, negativity will creep in. That's when I'll probably back away. You know.
You mentioned that, Scott. I mean, one thing I hear from recruits all the time is that you're honest.
Yeah.
Is like, where did that start in the recruitment process? Is that something you had to learn?
Yeah, it's definitely trial and error, Elliot. I'll tell you, man, because kids don't forget anything.
Right.
Number one, and I don't want to have to come back and be and what we asked them to do was really, really hard. Not just talking about the two gapping, but just talking about playing college football in general, or just playing college football, playing here in Iowa City. It's hard to do, and I would hate for the kid to come back and say, Coach Bell, you told me this, you promised me this, and it didn't happen. Because I've had that happen before, unbeknownst to me, just in my approach. So now I had to go back and check myself and be like, you know what? Let's make sure that I paint the picture exactly the way it's going to be. And if this kid's still interested, that's going to be the kid for us. You got to paint it exactly how it's going to be, and it's not always pretty. You know what I mean? It's not always sexy, but if that kid's still interested in it, he's probably interested in it for other reasons other than, you know, oh, this is college football. He probably has a vested interest in Iowa City. Maybe he wants to play in the Big Ten. Maybe he's got ties to Iowa or someone that played in Iowa that's important for him to be here. Those are the type of kids that I want to be, and I think you find that out when you're open and honest and when you're transparent with kids. Don't try to distract them with all the BS. You know what I mean?
Is that part of the reason why you guys had such a low attrition rate?
Yes.
Because you identify those kids that fit you mentally as much as physically, and then they're here. They understand what you're getting.
Yes, Scott, I think that's it. Being upfront and honest with them so that they know good times, bad times, whatever. Coach told me this would happen. Okay? And I think also when you look at myself, Coach Hodge, Coach Woods, Coach Betts, Jason Manson, you know, Phil Park, guys that have been there for a long time, we've been through the ups and downs of Iowa City. We've got personal experiences to share with them, to share with the families, so we can paint a really good picture of how it's going to be. We're not telling them it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And I think the other reason the lower attrition rate is our guys have it pretty good here. Mm-hmm. They have it pretty good in Iowa City. They're like the Beatles. Okay? we have to calm them down to make sure they know that, you know, guys, like, you go to Chicago, nobody knows who you are. Okay, you walk down Burlington Street, of course people are going to honk, but like, there's a bigger world outside of Iowa City. When kids get here, they're like, you know what, this is a nice little bubble. It's a nice place to go to school for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They get paid.
And now